Here in lovely Destin, Miramar Beach, Florida is your official dateline. In front of some beautiful artwork with Joe Cook of On3's Inside Texas. So we saw Sark today. Sark talked to us. He's in a really good place. Like he's got a team coming back that he knows is going to be pretty good. They made it to the semifinals last year. But it was interesting to me, for a guy who's breaking in a new quarterback, he seems very at ease with that new quarterback's development.
Yeah, it's Arch Manning. If you didn't know,
is he famous or something?
Yeah, we'll get it out.
Okay.
But no, he is very at ease, and a lot of that has to do with the on-field stuff. Played in 10 games last year, was in critical moments. Got the Georgia game, both Georgia games, played in the A&M game, scored that first touchdown.
Mm-hmm.
But he also started games, and granted, he started against UTSA and Mississippi State. We know Mississippi State went 2-10, and UTSA had a good year, but G5 team all the same. But still, that's still a better foundation than a lot of teams who are replacing an NFL drafted quarterback have going into another season.
Now, what has it been like locally? Because the Quinn Ewers draft position, at least for us, generated several days of content.
Right.
And the retroactive, should Arch have been starting last year? What is the feeling within the program about that?
I don't think there was ever a moment for Steve Sarkisian where he was thinking about let me take that back. There may have been moments, but I don't think it was like, okay, I'm going to do this. The closest we got was that first Georgia game, and that was to get Quinn right because he knew he was going to go back to Quinn.
Yeah.
So that was something that we saw. And then even when we knew he was banged up, he had a very bad game against Kentucky. That the scoreboard, it was one of the ugliest games of the year. The score is as close as it was because Quinn turned the ball over. But he still stuck with him. And then you saw him game through it against Texas A&M, that run up the sidelines. That was almost a touchdown. You saw him lead Texas back in the Peach Bowl against Arizona State, play a good game against Clemson. I don't think there was really much consideration. And if he wanted to do it, he would have done it at that UTSA game. He would have said, all right, this is where the keys are getting turned over. It's time to go. And for a lot of different reasons, he'll probably point to maybe inexperience or just the leadership factor that Quinn Ewers did have. He'll probably point to that and say, like, there was never a time when I was seriously considering making that permanent change and starting. So now we get this whole offseason full of Arch hype.
Yeah. Let's hear Steve Sarkisian talking Arch Manning.
Can you insulate a player these days? And just speaking on Arch, I mean, there's been so much publicity and build up now to role he's going to play. How do you manage that, or do you manage that? I know with Peyton was at Tennessee, I think he had some help with that sort of thing.
Yeah, I don't know if you can insulate it. Not anymore. I don't know if when Peyton was around, I don't know if there were cell phones and all those things, right? So it's a little different time, and a little different era than what our guys operate in now. You guys all didn't have Twitter accounts back then either, and you didn't report instantaneously. And you didn't just retweet what the next guy wrote about, because that's kind of what you guys do now. That's fine. Okay. But the idea of that for Arch, part of coming to the University of Texas is building that brand, is getting some of that exposure. And so, yes, do we support him as much as we can, like we do all of our players, but it's also a great platform for our guys. And so it's not all negative. There's a lot of positives to this. But at the end of the day, for a guy like Arch in this instance, I want to make sure that he enjoys this experience too, right? Here's lifelong dream, right? Of being the starting quarterback at the University of Texas. Now it's his opportunity. I want to make sure that he has a great experience. Part of that is the exposure. Part of that is protecting him and putting some guardrails up on that so that he can enjoy the experience.
So we know where Arch is. We know how happy Steve Sarkisian is with the situation. They open with Ohio State. They are right in the fire. And this is not a team that is just reloading after making the semifinals. How many? 13 draft picks?
13.
So why are they so confident in the younger guys? Because Steve Sarkisian talked about this today. He said, there's a lot of people in new roles, but they're not necessarily new faces.
Right. And younger may not be the right word. So you asked about the offensive line. I know we'll get to that. But you look at Texas offensive line last year, you lose 4 starters, 3 were drafted, and 1 is an undrafted free agent, and your center who has the most
big majors,
in Texas football history. So you're replacing 4 starters on your offensive line. all those guys who are candidates are either very, very highly touted, 5-star guys like Brandon Baker, who I think you talked to at the On3 Elite Series,
Yep.
got a modern day 5-star per On3's rankings. Either that or they're third or fourth year players. So these guys aren't young. They're older guys. They're Cole Hudson, who he's not going to be a returning starter in the preview mag sense,
Right.
but he's got a lot of
Yeah,
snaps.
he had to jump in last year when there were injuries.
He's played at Alabama. He started as a freshman. Trevor Gooseby, who stood in for both Cam Williams and Kelvin Banks, left tackle, went up against Michael Williams, went up against the Shamars at A&M, Nick Scourton, played really well. So there's a lot of confidence in the offensive line, in that not so much that, it's just going to be fine. We're replacing guys, we're reloading. I don't think there's that level of bravado, but it's like all these guys that we are considering for this offensive line, they've been in our program 3 or 4 years.
Yeah.
They've been around the way we do things. And then there is DJ Campbell, the only returning starter, right guard, actually higher ranked than Kelvin Banks in the recruiting rankings.
Was part of that 2022 recruiting class that really kind of set the foundation for,
correct.
I feel like, what Texas has become.
Correct. It was the class that Arch Manning probably looked at and said, okay, these are the guys who are going to be blocking for me if I go to Texas. So DJ Campbell going to be a big leadership factor, big part of what's probably a move to a little bit more gap stuff as opposed to zone. Nothing really worked all that great last year. It was a good offensive line, but Georgia, Clemson, Arizona State, Michigan, they made running the ball tough for Texas, and that's going to be a big
blocking
thing to
down
figure
on
out.
monsters. Easier than trying to reach block monsters.
Right.
That's generally how things work.
Just know where to go, and it'll help for a lot of younger running backs too, or maybe less experienced guys, because Quintravian Weisner comes back, but he's not what you would look at and think like, that's a running back one at Texas.
No, he's the bruiser, right? Yeah,
right.
But with CJ Baxter, if he's healthy, you'd think that's the guy, right?
His health is going pretty well from what we've heard. Christian Clark is a freshman who tore his Achilles maybe about 6 days after CJ Baxter tore his ACL.
Yeah.
A lot of hope in him. Jarrett Gibson, someone who from the Gainesville area, went to IMG. A lot of these gap schemes are simpler. It's like, hey, you're running right here. And so maybe for some players whose vision is good but not great.
Yeah, less to read for the running back. It's like that hole's going to be there and not you follow that guy's butt and the hole will open on it.
Reading cameras is how in high school is what I was taught about it. So basically there's going to be a little bit different look on offense, and hopefully that helps for Texas, the offensive line, be able to make some holes that they weren't able to last year.
Now, let's get into something Steve Sarkisian said today. We'll start with his quote, because I was fascinated by this, and I'm glad he said it, because I think it sets up a larger conversation.
Now more than ever, the length of the season, last year we played 16 games, and that was just to get to the semifinals. We would have been 17, right, to win a championship. And so the idea, I think we've all got to wrap our brain around. I don't know if we'll ever see an undefeated national champion again. If we do, that's a really good team. Because it's just so difficult, and it's difficult, yes, because of the quality of the opponents you play, but it's so difficult to stay healthy that long. I mean, you're going to have teams in years like we had last year where you lose your starting quarterback, and how do you respond to your quarterback being down? And you lose both your left tackles. That happened to us last year, or your left tackle, then your right tackle, and do you have the depth to endure? And so I think you're going to see teams more and more now, 2 losses, 3 losses, maybe even 4 losses that get in, not very different than the NCAA baseball tournament of what that looks like. I'd looked at Vanderbilt, I think, as a number 1 seed. There was a point in the season, they were 11-10, and now they're the number 1 seed in the baseball tournament. And so I don't know, and we kind of saw it in basketball this year with Florida and them winning the national, but this idea of somebody's going to go 16-0 in college football, man, put a statue up somewhere of that team, because I just don't know if that's going to happen again. And so the idea that I think, the powers that be are trying to get it right, I think is a good, healthy discussion.
So Joe, Sark's the most interesting person to talk about this, because he was with those dominant USC teams. He was an assistant, a coordinator on those dominant Alabama teams. So he's seen the different levels of dynasties, I guess. And I think he's right, though. You're not going to see another undefeated college football team. And people are going to have to get used to that. Like, I think people feel like if the team wins a national title and they weren't undefeated, they stunk.
Right.
Like, that's just not how it's going to work anymore.
I remember when all this 12-team stuff started coming out, I was like, okay, let's do a little research. And even the idea of one-loss national champions, I will probably see those a little bit more in number, but that's still maybe a rarity too. And the idea of 2-loss, it's crazy to think about that. That's why that 2007 season is so, like, hallowed in our memories, just because of what all happened. But then, undefeated in regulation, LSU, 2 losses, all that. And then I think there was like one other team that had like a legit claim to a national championship with 2 losses. It's like a Minnesota team in the 50s.
Yeah.
Like, we're just not used to teams with 2 or 3 like this past year having multiple losses. And that's just going to be something they have to get used to.
And I did my projected bracket, and I've had Texas as a preseason number 1. Like, I don't think they're going undefeated. Like, I think they're going to lose to Ohio State potentially, or they could lose at Georgia. I think they're going to be really good. But even I don't think the 1 seed's going to be undefeated. I thought what Oregon did last year was actually pretty extraordinary.
Right. And that's why I think there's one of those random selectors that UCF uses to claim a national championship that had them as the national championship. And Dan Landy's not going to put that on the side.
No, he's not putting it on the wall.
That's not going to prevent the logo jokes for Oregon and national championships, but beside the point. But, that Michigan team that had to win the 4-team playoff and other 4-team playoff champions that went undefeated, I don't know. They may be the last one for a while, just because we saw Ohio State, their rival, lose to Michigan, not play for their conference championship, and yet still win the national and
be dominant in the playoff.
Right, and finally hit the gear everybody thought they had in them.
And that's what's so interesting to me. And I think Texas is a good team to look at for this year, because let's say they could go to Columbus and lose.
Mm-hmm.
They could drop an early SEC game, but they could also become the hottest team because new starting quarterback, offensive linemen that have not been starters together before, and now like they actually strike me as the kind of team that could get hot late and then, or maybe they start out great. But the fact that they're playing Ohio State right out of the gate, I think, is absolutely fascinating.
It's going to be a lot of fun, and there are Texas fans talk about going to Columbus in 2005, like veterans talk about war stories. I'm not trying to make a joke, but that's the level of horror Texas fans have about going to Columbus in 2005. There are a lot of different factors for that. But yeah, it's one of those things where it's kind of great timing that we're entering an era where you don't need to be perfect to win a national championship. And there aren't really any teams that are perfect.
Yeah.
Even Ohio State had some of its whole, not that, quarterback was a hole, but compared to the rest of the team is a weakness. And the offensive line was a little bit more of a question after some injuries happened. And they had great guys step up.
Yep.
But it wasn't just first round quarterback, first round
I'm
lineman.
just excited about, the Texas defense against the best receiver in the country in Jeremiah Smith. That's going to be such a good test for Texas to see what, they're not going to face a better receiver the entire season than Jeremiah Smith.
And I what they did in the Cotton Bowl last year was, even with the Thorpe Award winner, they knew how good Jeremiah Smith was. They
did a good job in trying to take him away.
I think 2 catches, 3 yards, and they didn't just have Jahdae Barron shadow him. They put double coverage on him for the most part. That's why Mecca Ibuka and Carnell Tate and Travion Henderson had that run. That's why they had big games, because Smith wasn't having it, and that's what made that Ohio State team great, because they had other guys who could step up and make those plays. I wouldn't be surprised if you see a lot of Malik Muhammad playing corner against Jeremiah Smith. Michael Taft still back there, second-team All-American, former walk-on, and they're really excited about Jelani McDonald in the secondary. Just an athletic guy. If anybody's seen that interception he made against Kentucky, that's kind of the anticipation of what he might be able to provide. So they think that defense is going to be really strong again. They attack tackle at the transfer portal probably more and better.
That was the position they hit the hardest. That was the one you said, okay, they don't feel like the cupboard has what it needs, so they're going to go get it.
And they did it in a way to where they probably don't have to do that again next year, because guys like Murad Watson, Levon Johnson, a few different guys, they're multi-year guys. Cole Brevard, Travis Shaw, they're going to be 1-year guys just because they're at the end of their run. But now you have some multi-year guys.
And then they bring in Justice Terry as a freshman.
Justice Terry, Josiah Sharma, Maron Charles. They have the pipeline looks better and more normal now than it did before.
I can't believe we're talking about Texas and Ohio State.
I know.
I'm mad that it's 3 months away, but I am so excited that it's coming. Joe, thank you.
You ready for a noon kickoff?
I'm sorry, everybody.
I'm not.
You don't be the typical sports writer. We understand that you would like to party before the game. I understand. Joe is selfish. Joe wants to get his story done and then go watch other games. I feel your pain. We're going to watch other games after that one's over, right?
Yeah.
Because me and Ari are going to be there. Okay.
Yeah.
So, I know they'll be sad, but are we still recording?
We'll get Gus and Joel.
Oh, yeah. I don't think Gus likes to party, but we can try.